How's it going, everybody? Mr. Holton here, and are you a fan of Baldur's Gate 3? Well, of course you are. So am I. But what if I told you that there is an upcoming game that is more similar to Baldur's Gate 3 than you might think? Of course, I'm talking about Solasta 2. Solasta 2 is an upcoming CRPG in development by Tactical Adventures, which is a fairly small studio of RPG veterans or D&D veterans, and of course it's the sequel to the first Solasta game, Crown of the Magister. Now, Solasta 2 came out as a small demo last year, and yesterday I decided to check it out to see what it was all about, and well, I was pretty pleasantly surprised. So let me go through my thoughts first of all for the demo of the game, and then I'll move on to some of the future for the early access and for the full game, and I'll be adding timestamps below for your convenience. So first of all, I feel like the game looks pretty good for a smaller studio. It's also running on Unreal Engine 5, so maybe that's a given, and hopefully the dev team aren't struggling too much with the engine. That said, I do feel like because of the size of the dev team, because of this being a small studio, the lighting, the graphics, the textures overall, they look pretty good actually. Now, a little note on performance here. I did notice some hiccups when it comes to frame rates, and I have a pretty beefy PC, so I wasn't expecting that, but then again, this is just a demo. This is really just a tech demo, essentially, to see what this game is all about, to get like a vibe of what this game feels like. But for like the early section of the game, it looks pretty good, but again, there are some jank here and there. Some of the facial lip syncing doesn't really match up and things like that. Looks pretty wonky sometimes, but it's still very early. Now, one big downside that I noticed in the demo is that there's no character creator, and at first I thought that there wasn't going to be a character creator, but apparently there will be a character creator. That was confirmed by one of the developers themselves, and it will apparently be in the early access, so you have something to look forward to when it comes to creating your own character. You are not stuck with these pre-made characters. Speaking of which, there are 4 pre-made characters that you play as in the demo, and they're essentially adopted siblings, apparently. And of course it's a gnome, it's a dwarf, it's an elf, and a human. Now, because this is a demo, the game felt pretty linear in terms of story, but I did notice that there are some choices you can do. For example, apparently, according to one of my viewers, there is a possibility where you could long rest before an encounter where you save a couple of people from crabs. But if you long rest before that, it's possible that these people have died. So, you know, it's one of those, you have to choose what to do because you might not have the time to save people if you're too slow. So there is definitely a form of choice and consequence in this game, and there will definitely be more in the future. That said, the demo itself is pretty linear when it comes to the story, so you can't really do much in terms of exploration. Also, there is a distinct lack of clickiness. There aren't too many things you can click on and engage with. Again, it's a demo, so what can you expect? For now, though, I would describe the experience in the demo as thinner than the early access for Baldur's Gate 3, for example. Now, when it comes to combat, the game has a similar rule set to Baldur's Gate 3 for anyone who's not big on D&D mechanics. Well, let's just say that it is somewhat similar, but it uses a sort of different movement system, but the general gameplay feel is sort of similar. And one thing I do really like is the effort they've put into animations when you are casting spells or when you're attacking. Some of the sound effects sound pretty nice, you know, they put a lot of effort into the sound effects as well. That's one of the things that made Baldur's Gate so enjoyable when it came to combat, at least according to, well, me, is that the animations when you're charging up your spell or whenever you're using your spells, it's all very meaty and impactful because, as we know, this is a CRPG and these, you know, combat sections can get pretty tedious and slow, and so if you don't have really that kind of bombastic, you know, sound and those animations that make you feel like, oh, you're getting immersed, then it can easily become boring. But thankfully, they are putting a lot of effort into this stuff as well. So props to the folks over at the studio for doing that. That is definitely going to help out a lot for people that have a hard time getting into CRPGs. So already that's a huge plus. When it comes to difficulty, I would say that the demo itself, it's pretty streamlined. I mean, there's not too many difficult encounters. I pretty much face rolled through most of it. Then the final encounter, when you're fighting against like the final, I wouldn't say boss, because it's just a part of the first act of the game, so it's not very far into the game, so you're not really getting that spoiled whenever I show this. You know, that encounter was interesting because there's some challenge involved, because you have to make sure that a tower is not destroyed while you're trying to, you know, defend it against enemy waves, essentially, or several enemies. And yeah, I think that was pretty fun. There was some form of challenge here. There is, however, a small amount of hand-holding, which, you know, I saw some people complain about, but I think it's fine for now, and they're obviously going to fine-tune that and give you options to select your difficulty and such. So I think that's fine. Now, in terms of story and characters, I can't really say much because you don't really get that far into the game again, but it does seem interesting, especially this ragtag group, or well, adopted siblings from various races. You get introduced to another, I think he was a magician of some kind. I don't know if he's a sorcerer. I think he was a sorcerer. He looks like a dragonkin, or he looks, you know, they look kind of alien. They have their own homebrew thing going on with this game, so they're not officially like licensing D&D or the Forgotten Realms or anything like that. This is their own homebrew thing, but they're using general guidelines that you can use through D&D that's free to use. So, you know, they have their own world here, and I think it's pretty interesting so far. Also, some heavy hitters we got to talk about here in terms of voice actors. There is, of course, Amelia Tyler, who is playing the main villain in the game, the woman we see here, the goth mommy, so to speak, and she is, of course, the narrator for Baldur's Gate 3. We have Ben Starr playing a character in this game as well. There are several other voice actors that you might recognize in modern times that you probably like that are going to be in this game. So they're coming out swinging with Solasta 2. So overall, I would say that the demo overall impressed me. I didn't expect to enjoy the game as much as I did, or the demo, in those 2 hours that I played the game. And yeah, this is looking good. I'm looking forward to this game. It's definitely on my wish list, so to speak, and I will definitely be jumping into the early access in March. Speaking of the early access, we have a couple of things that have been confirmed that are going to be additions or things that you might not have known about the game. So the early access launch will let you pick between 6 different classes and 13 subclasses. And the 6 main classes are the fighter, the paladin, the cleric, the wizard, a rogue, and ranger. And some of the subclasses here are, for example, the commander for the fighter, wizard, we have court mage, school of ruin. It's looking pretty good. It seems like you will have a lot of options to play around with. Now, in terms of multiclassing, it will not be available in early access and will apparently be in the final game as well. Just like Baldur's Gate 3, really. So, hey, for now, this is looking like they're essentially using the template that Larian used for Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of developing Solasta 2. Now, I want to make sure that we remember something here. We can't really compare the Team Tactical Adventures to Larian because they're not at all the same size. And they obviously haven't come as far as Larian has, but this is still looking very similar. It looks like this type of RPG that people really have learned to love nowadays. Like, there are so many new people that are fans to CRPGs and these turn-based games thanks to Baldur's Gate 3, and of course we have a lot of older fans of these types of games who are just loving this. The thing is, this is very similar in the fact that they're using cinematic cameras or cinematic dialogue, and, you know, whenever you make choices, there are some pretty big repercussions so far. And, you know, again, the demo is pretty good. I should recommend you to check it out, really, because it was enjoyable. What can I say? I'm not going to say that it's amazing so far, but I'm definitely looking forward to the early access. And again, don't go in with the expectation that this will be Baldur's Gate 3, but if you've been looking for a game that is kind of similar, that feels very similar in terms of vibe and feeling, and in gameplay and, you know, storytelling, I would say that this is probably the thing that you've been looking for so far. Now, if Solasta 2 has piqued your interest, or if you're already interested in the game, well, remember to subscribe to the channel because I will be covering Solasta 2 for the foreseeable future. And thank you to all my wonderful Ensvin Squad members for supporting the channel over at Patreon and here on YouTube. You guys are awesome. This has been Mr. Holton, signing off.